Starting now, we have two types of tasks that we're going to give our students. The first type of task is what you're doing already. It's the book projects, it's the big projects with the little chunks that you've divided and handed over to your students based on what you wanted. The second thing is now going to be for people who have more time on their hands, for people who want to contribute more, and for people who don't have enough time to contribute for the big tasks. So this is what we're going to give you guys in general, is like a pool of tasks, we call it, where there are all these little itty bitty things that they can contribute to, that they can work on anytime they don't have anything to do, anytime they don't want to talk about, or sorry, they don't want to contribute a whole bunch of time, anytime they're finished with their tasks like in 2 days and just have nothing to do and are just waiting for their next weekly task. So I'm going to give those pools of tasks to the team leads. So Yasmin, you will be receiving them from Rita. Actually, I'm going to give them to you. You're going to hand them out to your students. Toktam, you're going to have your own. So if you guys have like the original tasks that you have, from now on, you will be given wholes or part of a book depending on where you're at in your supervision level. It is now up to you as leaders to divide them and assign them to your students. You are the people who decide who gets to work on what, who needs to work on this, who will maximize the productivity working on that. And when it comes to a book or a part of a book, there is a lot that goes into it. Like I was talking about, the emails, the spreadsheets, which we will talk about, the folders, the chapters, everything, it goes into that. So you decide how that's divided. You can have 1 up to 2 leaders that are like working on that book. If you have multiple projects, if you're higher up and you have multiple book projects or multiple affiliations in Mori that you're working with, then you give part of the book to one person, part of the book to the other. Just make sure that they're on track. If something is going slowly, don't accept that. Don't just say, okay, well, it's going slowly. Figure out why. What's going slowly? Who's going slowly? If somebody can't finish a chapter after a week, having been at Mari and trained for that for multiple weeks, that's what you need to attend to as a manager and as a leader. Check in with that person. Is it too hard for you? Is there something you're not understanding? Is there anything you're taking too seriously? If you're taking because I've had students who are working on the research folder part of the chapter where they spent I think they spent 2 weeks working on a research folder. And I was like, why are you spending 2 weeks working on this? She's like, well, I have to read every paper. I'm like, no, you don't. You just have to find them. You don't need to read every paper and scan it and do all that. So sometimes they don't understand the full extent of the task. You have to address that. We need to weed out the problems, not just deal with the presence of them being there. It's not like we can just be like, okay, well, this is going slower. No. For the pool of tasks that we are now going to address, first of all, for each of you on your Airtables, which I just closed, you need to make a new tab with each of your students, and they need to make a new tab with each of their students with their phone numbers, emails, any other contact information and how you contact them, birth date. Those are important. When we are a team and we are a family and somebody's birthday, we congratulate them on their birthday. This is important. This is a team. These are all the little things that make up high productivity teams that last. It's something that seems really dumb and really small, but it's important. This needs to be, okay, yeah, so also, I'll get to the actual tasks.
Sorry,
yeah.
Do you want to just share that one with
this?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to go over it and I'll share it with everybody. Yeah, so these things that we're talking about, they need to be in our guides and videos. If you notice that they're not in our guides and videos, make a guide, make a video. Be assertive, take initiative. From now on, weekly meetings include weekly reports. So right after you've had that meeting, they need to write that report. That's part of their pool of tasks that they need to complete. You need to complete, everybody needs to complete, myself as well. This is the best way that, you know, Daisy, you can have a student who has a student who has a student who has a student, and you can check out what's going on with that like far off student and know exactly what they're doing. So yeah, so instead of the notes that you take in the meeting, well actually, aside from the notes that you take in the meeting, include a weekly report. What are they doing? What did they just finish off? What is their productivity? How do you think they use their time? You are now evaluators. So did they use their time wisely? Did they not use their time wisely? Do you think they spent 3 hours when they said they spent 10 hours? This stuff is important. We're not trying to be tricked. We're also not trying to be pessimistic. We're just being realistic. We gotta be able to evaluate somehow. I'll keep talking, you don't have to take notes, I'll send you the document. So among the pool of tasks, there's 4 now things that you guys need to pay attention to. This is the 4 types of tasks that will always be consistently there. The first thing is social media. With social media, what we're talking about is from now on, each team will come up with 1 post related to research advancement and 1 other post related to misdiagnosis, medical error, medicine that they find interesting, that they will now share with Mari Media. I will share that contact with them. If they are done with that, they can start looking for next month. It's not really like that big a deal. It's not like they have only one to do. We can also, I wanted to spend a few minutes brainstorming about this, but we'll just finish off everything, go back to that, and then we'll circle back around. The next thing is news articles. We are now going to try and be published in all types of formats. So we've been doing textbooks, but now we want to do news articles. To be honest, the end goal is journal articles, but we're not going to start there because we're already publishing textbooks. It's like moving backwards. So we're going to, from now on, each team is going to take 1 important news channel, news website, and they're going to find out how to get published on there. What are the steps to take for that? How do we approach it? What type of language do we use? And this is all in the health sector. So CNN Health, BBC Health. What were the other examples we used?
Fox News.
Fox is very,
Yeah.
no.
BBC.
Yeah, BBC, CNN, Worldwide News.
National Geographic.
Yeah,
something
National
like that.
Geographic, News and Research, Scientific American, all of these. So you can choose a site and go into that, figure out how to do it, and start that process with your students. And so that's one of the reasons why this is in the pool of tasks, because we assume this is never ending.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so for the news articles assignment, basically, when we ask these like agencies, are we trying to like fill a niche that they don't already have? Like, are they like, we want to be published by them, so do we ask them like, what do you want us to publish? Because we don't really have any news articles right now, right?
No, we don't. So you can do a couple of things.
Okay.
One of which is if you look in a lot of websites, they tell you what they're looking for. And a lot of times they'll ask you to send an abstract before you send the paper. So when you send that abstract, if they're really nice, they'll give you some feedback. If they're not, they'll be like, no thank you, this is not what we're looking for. And it'll kind of be like, we're gonna shoot in the dark until we hit the target. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Makes sense.
This is also a really good thing to give to your students to do because it sparks interest in the field. And it gives them something to do that isn't the same chapter they're doing every week, right? So long-term goal for that. Working on that. The other thing we're working on, we mentioned at the Mari conference, is the Doctor magazine that we're going to be publishing. This one is to your and your students' free will. What do you want the world to know? What do you think is interesting? we're not bound by anything with this one because this is our own publishing. So get creative. If you have some extra time and you want to work on something, if your student has extra time, if there ever comes a week where like your student doesn't have a task or something, which hopefully shouldn't happen, we'll talk about that next. This is something to get them to do. This is something to get yourself to do. This is something that like can go beyond, you know, like volunteer jobs and stuff like that. This is like, oh, okay, I think this is super interesting. I want everyone to know about it. Write about it, we'll publish. Once we've gotten all 4 of these things done, at the end of 6 months or a year, we're gonna start doing evaluations. So, who's written the most chapters? Who spent the most time working on them? Who's increased our social media presence the most? Who has shared the most, liked the most, you know, retweeted, whatever goes on in social media today. I'm like 100 years old. Who's published, you know, who's managed to be able to publish, who's been consistently working on it, who has been consistently sending those emails. That's something that you guys will be able to tell me based on your students. Your students will be able to tell you, you know, and so on. Who's, you know, published the most articles for the Doctor magazine? Who has hired them? Who's been able to bring in the most people? So at the end of this, like the 6-month and the 12-month mark, you guys send us a report on what you guys did, what your team did. You can single out individual people who have been, you know, excelling. You can single out teams under your, I want to say under your command, but not literally under your command. And at the end of that report, what's really important is you telling us how you think you can improve, how you think your team can improve, where you think your team can improve. Because telling us where you are weakest tells us where to help you most. And that's what maximizes what we're able to do. And these questions are what determine awards and certificates at our conferences. These are what, you know, identify recognition, who deserves it, who doesn't. So that was the pool of tasks talk. I want to get back to this stuff and get through it so you guys can go home. So when we were talking about the emails, we mentioned, you know, send it to each individual person, what to include on there, how to sign off, is where I've pretty much left it at, is sign off, include our address, your position. Your position is important. You are an important member of our team. You are not just, you know, Daisy. You are Daisy Lee, research coordinator, you know what I mean? Like, build yourselves up. I got, like, this one time I built myself up so much, they responded to me as, like, Dr. Escari, and I was like, I wish. Like, girlfriend, I wish, but thank you. So that stuff's great. The other key thing I want to talk about in emails is, look at that, we have a rejection letter draft. Just because they reject you, don't mean you leave them alone. This is important. First thing we do, and this particular rejection letter I remember sending because it was for AE, was they responded in one line, I don't want to do it. That's it. Like, they didn't even sign off, they didn't say hi, it was just like, no. Like, okay, I'm not offended. Don't take it to heart. Again, not a depiction of who you are as a person, but the way we respond is important. They may respond to us like, you know, whatever, but you build that respect for yourself with them. So if they say, I don't want to do it, you respond with, hello, Dr. So-and-so. We appreciate your response and the time you took to respond to us. So, if you are interested in further collaborating in the future or change your mind, please let us know. You don't ever kill contact, even if they say, you know, like, screw you, go away. You don't kill contact. Because they'll say, screw you, go away now, and then, like, in 6 months, they'll actually realize what we're doing, and they'll be like, hey, so remember when you sent me an email? Like, I'm interested in doing that now. I've had people do this, like, straight up, like, heads and professors and, like, big shots who are just like, you emailed me a month ago. I totally ignored you, but can I like work now? And I'm like, come on in, you know, like, it's just,